Hello everybody and welcome back to Shane's Squirrel Shack, where we talk about autism awareness and all of that. And today I'm coming at you guys with, for me, is a very special video to share with you guys on this channel. And this is basically my overcoming story of me being on the autism spectrum. Kind of where I was a lot less high functioning to where I am now as a person. And today I'm going to share with you those overcoming challenges and obstacles of getting from where I started to where I am now as an autistic person. To give you a little 101 on myself, my name is Shane, I'm 24, and I am a high-functioning autistic. I was diagnosed at the age of 2. So leading up to that diagnosis, there were some things that were kind of sticking out with me as a kid. You know, newborn, really nothing distinguishable, nothing kind of setting me apart from other kids. It was around a year and a half where, hey, I'm not talking, I'm ignoring my parents, I'm presenting odd behaviors, I'm not responding to my parents when they call my name, I'm not looking at my parents, I'm presenting very antisocial based behaviors, and for a while, my parents thought I was deaf. And then certain behaviors like me screaming when the phone would ring or overly reacting to sensory based environments, it kind of led to my parents putting me through a lot of tests, through a lot of diagnosis tests and all of that. And right around when I was 2 was when I got diagnosed with autism. And that was something my parents didn't know how to take. Keep in mind, when I was diagnosed, this was the late 90s and everyone was freaking out about autism. They thought it was mercury. Everyone was getting mercury inside of them, and all these mercury shots were causing autism and all of that. So everyone was freaking out. My parents were like, oh my god, oh my god. Granted, my mom found out she got twins a couple months later, so her world was kind of like, oh god, how is she gonna take care of me, this, autistic kid, where there's not as much information out on it today as it was in the 90s. So that started a long string of therapies, such as physical therapy, behavioral therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and that lasted for several years. Certain parts of those therapies longer than others. But it was right off the bat. After I got diagnosed, they're throwing me in all these therapies. I'm learning sensory-based therapies. I'm learning ways of calming down, properly engaging with play, slowly learning how to talk. And man, I didn't learn how to talk until I was over 3. I had to learn sign language just to be able to do basic communication with my parents and those who I was being, if you want to call, educated or coached by in therapy-based environments. So I was just kind of thrown right into that right away. And I was thrown into a Head Start program at my elementary school, where I continued those therapy-based activities in an academic-based setting, being introduced towards children my age. Now, I would never really engage with children. I would kind of keep to myself. I was very antisocial. Didn't make a lot of friends kind of growing up in grade school, especially early childhood. Now, kind of going into kindergarten, I was in mostly the main classes. Now, a lot of kids on the spectrum, or various disabilities, they have classes catered to them outside of the main class. They might go into a certain room where they get educated in a different way. That happened with me. I'd spend the morning classes with my peers, and then the afternoon classes going through special education-based classes and activities and exercises. And again, I really didn't talk to any kids. I didn't have friends. I didn't know how to communicate. Everyone would communicate amongst themselves about the things that most 5-year-olds would know how to talk about. Me, I didn't know anything that a 5-year-old should talk about. All I knew was Blue's Clues and playing with blocks. And those were the kind of fixations I developed when I was a young kid. Something with those on the autism spectrum is that they develop fixations. And I had many of mine. My main one when I was a kid was Blue's Clues. I had the whole getup. I dressed like Steve everywhere. I had the handy dandy notebook. I had the orange VCRs. I had the outfit. I had the thinking chair. Oh my gosh, I had everything. And I would obsess over it. I was Mr. Steve, man. Who didn't want to be Steve in 2000. Like, don't tell me that you didn't want to be Steve if you were a toddler in 2000. Come on, don't at me, man. But it was around the time when I was 5, I got a student aide. And her name was Mrs. Marietta Kutievich, and she was an amazing person in my life, and she was my best friend for a long time. So the friends that I had weren't friends who were my age, so I didn't know how to make friends my age. I latched onto someone who was 45 years older than me, and she was my best friend for like a long time. And, you know, she played the role of like a mentor or a friend, but someone who kept me in check during school, making sure I was getting everything done. Because I didn't know how to act in the classroom. I would talk out of turn, I would interrupt, I would get moving around, I would go into outbursts. I would sometimes not get along with kids. And that kind of kept going on. And it got to a point, like when I was in 3rd grade, I was refusing to really talk with anyone. And in my IEP, Individual Education Plan, which is something a lot of kids on various disabilities have, they kind of incorporated like a program where I would have to, at like once a week, have like this group lunch thing where in the back of this classroom, because in the school I went to in Chicago, we didn't have a cafeteria. Like, we all ate in our lunchrooms. And in the classrooms, excuse me. And in the back of this classroom in 3rd grade was a table. We made this thing called Lunch Club up, where 3 people would go once a week and sit with Shane in the lunch table, kind of encourage me to socialize. I let everyone else socialize at that table but me. I never said a thing. All of them, the 3 of them were talking amongst themselves, and I'm just, where's my student aide? People! You know, it was overwhelming for me. And then, like, I would just try and do the very best at doing my thing. And those were kind of surrounded around my fixations. Some of those became building blocks. I had this thing where I would build blocks all the time, like castles and houses and villages, and that was, like, therapeutic for me. You know, just being able to build this world outside this one that I couldn't fit in with. So that was very freeing for me. And then I developed this fixation or this, you know, huge obsession with architecture. I wanted to design everybody a house. I wanted to build blueprints and all of that. So I had these odd interests that most young kids, like 7, 9 years old, wouldn't have. Building blocks, architecture, you know, just kind of stuff like that. When most kids at that age were playing with action figures, watching Nickelodeon at that point or whatever, Cartoon Network. Me, I was still stuck watching, you know, PBS Kids, like the really young young start children's programming and all of that. I didn't know what kids my age were into. So that always kind of got in the way of me trying to socialize and make friends. Now, fast forward, I moved to a new school in a new state, and my social skills were still very, very behind. Now I'm in a new environment with new people, and it's already a layer of frustration on me and confusion and just overwhelmingness that I cause more problems. I had a hard time engaging with kids in my gym classes or recess, and that would get me into trouble. And let alone, I really didn't have any friends. And I was still I got a new student aide, and it was around that time where I became kind of disappointed and mad that I had student aides. I didn't want to be that guy who was in a classroom and just had someone following him all day. I didn't want to be that guy. And so this is where my outlook on being autistic changed. Now, granted, around this time, I was told I had autism. That was when I was 9. I completely brushed it off. I'm like, oh, what's this? Can I go play outside? And then as I got a little older, I had questions. You know, the next year I started asking questions, and I started looking at things differently around me. Like, oh, that's why I have someone following me every day. They're not a special friend of mine. There's someone making sure, monitoring my disability, and it kind of changed my perspective and made me understand why I'm in this kind of place that I am. And so that's when that frustration turned into motivation, and this is kind of where my overcoming story starts to take place. It was middle school, and I still really didn't have friends. I stuck out like a sore thumb. I had this obsession of wearing this suit to school every day, so I had this suit I would wear to school every day. It had like 6 cats hairs worth on it. I had like 6 cats at the time. It had like cat haired suit all over it. It was like I was the cat haired suit kid. So I continued to stick out. I kind of got made fun of for it. So again, not doing great making friends and kind of getting out of my own world to get into the world. And if you watch a lot of my videos, I talk about how autistics have a hard time coming out of their world to the world. Watch some of my other videos if you want to learn more about that and kind of my take on that. But now we're in middle school, like 7th grade, and I'm getting envious. I'm getting jealous that all these kids can just do what they want and not have a student aide follow them or have an IEP or have to leave during your class to go to speech therapy or go to an alternative English class. I got so jealous. I'm like, why does that have to be me? I don't want this. I don't like this. I don't like having to do additional therapy outside of school. And it made me want to get better. Here's me, like now at 7th grade, still receiving therapy at home, trying to, do therapy-based activities that aren't in a school-based setting, such as going to a store comfortably, getting items and, being able to talk to a cashier. I'm at that point where Mom would let me go into a store and get a pack of gum kind of thing. But I couldn't go into a store alone. I would freak out and all of that, so I'd had therapy kind of implemented with me outside of school, where therapists would take me into a store and get basic items. Now, I didn't like therapists, and I was like, I want to do this myself, blah, 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 but obviously I wouldn't, so I'd give therapists the time of their lives, having them chase around me in my backyard and get away from therapy. Oh, I was an, pardon my French, an asshole to these therapists. And after I kind of clicked with me, I was like, wait, I have to overcome this stuff. I have to work on these things in order for these guys to get away from me. I have to prove that I can get away from these guys. I was always told you'll always have an aide. You won't get a good job. You won't be able to go into college and take care of yourself. It was in 8th grade when my mentality changed from, oh, whatever, to watch me. I told everyone who doubted me, watch me. So that's when I started making the work. That's when I started taking the plunge to make friends. Here I am in the beginning of 8th grade being the only person sitting at lunch tables to having a group of friends towards the end of that year who were building me, who were creating these really meaningful friendships that I still hold a couple of them 10 years later to this day. Actually, one of them was one who encouraged me to do this channel. So this person who brought me in during a really low time in my life where I was really depressed, always alone, and now I'm doing this channel because of that one person who really reached their hand out to me. So you know who you are if you're watching this. Thank you again. But again, my mentality turned to watch me. And I put in the work. I started making the friends. I started kind of checking myself with my behavior and started showing people that, hey, I can actually do these things and do them on my own. I wanted independence. It was something that I had started seeking, and I wanted to prove to the world and those who kind of placed these limitations on me that no, I'm going to be much more than that. I'm going to be much more than that. And it was after I started developing that mentality that I started actually talking to kids about my overcoming, because that was when things started to change and my classmates started noticing a little bit. Now, it's not at the level that I'm doing today, and I still struggled a lot. And so now we're in high school, and I'm at that point where I'm like, I don't want to be miserable in high school, so I had to do more work to overcome. I didn't want to be the kid in the suit, being made fun of my freshman year of high school. So I had to drop that whole getup. I learned how to wear more casual clothing, t-shirt and jeans and all of that. I actually had a teacher make a bet in 6th grade. He was like, you need a promise by the end of 8th grade you're wearing t-shirt and jeans. I signed it. And this teacher was really influential with me kind of growing up in middle school. He actually helped do a lot of those therapies with me, and I actually still talk with him to this day. Now, going into high school, I dropped the suit getup. I'm trying to make friends. I joined sports. I joined a cross-country team. And again, I kind of stuck out. I didn't know how to make friends and talk to people in that environment. And in a way, that was almost therapy for me. because it made me have to go out of my way and socialize with people and kind of overcome some of those growing pains. And quite frankly, I look a lot of my life and being in real world situations as therapy. Whenever I'm in a place or a situation that really challenges me with my autism and some of the traits, I look at that as an opportunity, as a form of therapy, an opportunity for me to overcome what I currently have kind of as an obstacle. And that mentality carries from high school to as I'm making this video right now. So now I'm still overcoming some of this stuff. I don't have a student aide anymore. I'm now a varsity athlete in cross country. Now senior year of high school, I am a team captain, breaking school records. And here's this kid who wouldn't even let people share the same sandbox with them or the same foursquare square at recess or in gym class. I'm now leading a team. I'm now being looked up from a lot of athletes in the state. And it was like, wow, here I am overcoming stuff now. And here's some stuff actually happening. And that's when I started actually like, you know what? I want to share my experience with people. I want to help people. I wanted to show people that change is possible. And at the end of high school, I started talking to kids throughout my high school, doing some speeches on how to be, about my story and how to help those on the spectrum. I did that at a few grade schools as well. And it was around that time, I was 18 now, and a front page article comes out about me, about my overcoming story. And that was like super exciting to me, and a lot of people were like, dude, you actually changed a lot. But now 6 years later after that, I had no idea what was in store for me. And I still had a lot of overcoming to do. Going into college as an autistic was extremely tough. It took 2 times for me to actually be comfortable with it. Because I didn't know how to socialize with college kids, share a dorm, or be in a really crowded space with people who I wasn't used to full time. And going into a third university, I, again, was still having a hard time making friends. I didn't know how to interact with 20-year-olds. As even as you overcome these obstacles growing up and all of that, you'll always face new ones as you get older that you haven't realized or sat down with yourself with your disability and like, how can I overcome this? They're all curveballs thrown unexpectedly at you. And it has taken me a long time to develop a mindset that any curveball that comes at me that's unexpected, that is an opportunity for therapy for me to be able to overcome this challenge. But you have to look at it that way, as therapy and something to overcome, and not fear and not let you get in the way or define you in a negative way. So, in college, I'm at a point where it's a very lonely time. I had a really hard time stepping out of my world to the world because it was a very much larger world than what I was used to. And so I just kind of retracted. I, took into a lot of unhealthy habits during college to kind of cope with the fact that I wasn't fitting in. I couldn't make friends or talk to people. And it did a lot of damage for me. And again, it took me a while to kind of snap out of it and be like, okay, prove yourself wrong and you can get out of these obstacles and really show people that, and not just show people, but show myself that I can overcome this, and being able to show people that, hey, you can overcome this. There is hope. There is a possibility. And 4 years after going into college, I am now having a much easier time making friends, maintaining and creating relationships. And that just comes from throwing yourself into the wolves. You have to throw yourselves into the wolves and say, that you can do it, and watch me. Show people who doubt you and say, watch me. All those people who said, give me those doubts, I proved wrong. I got a job. I got a great job where they're considering moving me up to management. I graduated college. I lived on my own. I'm looking at living back on my own. I'm very independent, removed student aids, fully verbal right now, and just this very transformed person who yet recognizes that there's still work to be done. At this point, what I want to do with this is to help as many people as possible in the autism community, show people that there is hope. There are ways to overcome your obstacles. For families with kids or those close to them who have autism or adults on the spectrum, my job, what I want to do now is shed hope, is to give hope towards families and those on the spectrum that you can overcome, that there is ways to work through it. And I want to take that on a larger level. I want to talk with young kids. I want to talk with adults. I want to talk with parents. I want to talk with educators and see how we can be better aides and advocates towards autistics. And that's going to take a team effort. And I would love to play a huge role in that. I would love to, and I feel like I have a lot to give. I am able to dive down in an analytical level on why we act upon these traits and respond to these traits and behaviors the way we do. And I love peeling into myself and being able to be that self-aware and use that to help others. And I hope that this video is just the beginning of a very long journey. And I want to thank you all for tuning into this video. If you like what you heard, please like, comment, subscribe. Please share this to anyone that you think could benefit from this, or just any support possible would be amazingly appreciated. Let's keep this rolling. I really want to be able to do something with this, and I hope that this is the beginning of what could be something great. And I want to thank you again for hanging out in the Squirrel Shack, and I hope that you guys will be back. Again, thank you so much.